Okay, we're on page 253, and we're looking at the shock and disappointment of World War One. This is a very major event, and you say, no kidding. Okay, it was the world at war. But in special ways regarding its impact on modern Christianity. It was not so much a direct impact as much as just a contemporary impact. It was the times that were culminating around World War One that were so very significant. We've been able to look at especially things like how dogma influenced the church in the Middle Ages, and how the Reformation was a response to the dogma as they got back to the original scriptures, and humanism grew out of that. And I don't mean secular humanism or humanism as it's thought of in our moment here, but how they were getting away from the idea of you had to have the clerical influence to be able to tell people what to do, where people were now they were influenced to read the Bible for themselves, that as human beings we can all think and reason, and it's not just something for an elite group in the church to do. And so we can see that in history, but the things we're going to be looking at today and here on out are going to be those things that typically most affect why we are here the way we are, why we have our fundamentalist thinking, and the influences that directly impacted the fundamentalist movement, or that the fundamentalist movement was reacting to. One of the things that I like to especially point out is this idea of conviction. That's been sprinkling in my language in the last week, and I'm thinking I'm going to do a sermon I'd like to do on conviction, because in fact, this has kind of been the whole aspect of doing church history, was to develop our sense of conviction. But conviction in Christians is greatly lacking. Okay. Is it because of some modern movement? No, it's because of people. That's just the way people are. Okay, we want to be able to have conviction. We don't want to say things like, "Oh well, church is on, and it should be a nice service today because let me see, it's going to be the Thanksgiving season," or "Oh, Christmas is so nice, and I think I'm gonna maybe go, maybe not." That's lack of conviction. We should not only be emotionally tied to these things. Okay, it's one thing to have an emotional commitment that's based on really what feels good to us. It's another thing to have an intellectual conviction. Okay, an intellectual conviction as opposed to a slavish mentality to an ideology. We want to be doing this because we have reason to, and our reason, we have compelling reasons, not just rationales for why we do something, like, well, this is the reason why I'm doing it. We want compelling reasons to do. So if you hear this in a sermon again on a Sunday morning, you'll know where the seed thoughts came from. And so as we look at what was going on in church history, we want to be able to have a compelling sense of, I really want to go to church because I think this is not only right, but it's just desperately needed also. And it is the truth. It is righteousness. It is right to do this. And we want to be right with God, and we want to know the right things about God. So the sense of conviction is something that should grow out of our analysis of church history. So we come up to this time of the shock and disappointment of World War I, and we've been referring to, over the last several weeks, about how liberalism had gotten established. It had gotten established out of the German rationalism that was denying the miraculous, denying the supernatural, treating the the Bible as if it's just any other history book, and that sense had pervaded some of the American seminaries as they tried to get over some people who were authorities, that they could embellish their degrees and to make sure that they would be more respected. If having studies was good, well, having more studies was even better, and having critical studies and critical theory and higher criticism, which denied the miraculous, became all the more significant to them. Now, what you had going on up to the point of World War I was you had the growing revivalism that was now in ascendancy. It was now being raised up and growing and more popular, but it was growing at the same time that you had the liberalism in a number of the seminaries who had caved to liberalism. And so there was a competition. Now, because of the American Revolution, you had much greater freedom of religion and much greater freedom of true religion. And so you had a lot of reforms that were going on in society. Because as you get a more Christian people, you're going to have a more loving people. It's going to be reflected in the culture. And so you had the temperance movement, and you had the anti-slavery movements, and all this was growing. And it looked like that America and the revival spirit and the effect of Christianity, this was for the dispensationalists, was just part of what was going on in the Philadelphia age, and it was going to be replaced by the Laodicean age, and it was going to end in the tribulation. But the liberals didn't look at it that way. The liberals looked at it as, oh, we are being successful to set up God's kingdom on earth. And they had a lot of post-millennial thinking. They didn't recognize the millennium. They saw the book of the Revelation as symbolic because they couldn't understand it. The reason they couldn't understand it was because they weren't dispensationalists, and so they had to find some other way to utilize it. And so you had a lot of the reform movement. To them, it reflected on how Christianity was being how Christianity was being victorious to improve society. Okay, now, we're not looking at an improvement of society. We look at a salvation from society to get into heaven. We don't want to have an improved society. We want to have a saved people, which will reflect in an improved society. But you see what you're making your goal. You don't want to put the cart before the horse. Salvation first, and then if everybody's truly loving each other with the love of God, then that will impact society. But again, liberalism didn't see it that way. They saw it as, oh, everything's getting so much better, and we're going to stomp out social injustice. We're going to stomp out poverty. We're going to start feeding the world, and mankind is going to be elevated. They only saw it as a kingdom, an earthly kingdom only, not one that reflected the heavenly kingdom instead. So this is a result of the amillennialist perspective, and this is what's on page 253. The amillennialist perspective. Everything's getting better. And then World War I happens, and they're like, oops, we got something wrong. So paragraph 752, we'll look at it. As spiritual Christianity bore its influence on society, dispensational teaching about the imminent return of Christ was not as attractive, okay, because people didn't see it as Christ coming back, because the world is a mess, okay, so it didn't look that way to them. They thought, oh, we're just going to get better and better and better. We're going to be a bunch of progressives, especially in Protestant churches that had not been as affected by revivalism. Remember, in the Protestant churches, they had the old lights and the new lights, and they looked at the old lights. Were like, well, we're just going to continue on in our intellectual tradition, and the New Lights brought in more experiential religion and revivalism. So the Protestant churches that had not been affected by the revivalism, they didn't see the dispensational urgency as being so critical. Their amillennialist views were bolstered by the social advances in the world. Amillennialism, that's an eschatological perspective that there's no millennium. It's just we're going to make everything better and Jesus is just going to come down and take his throne. It does not emphasize a future earthly reign of Christ in a literal 1,000-year kingdom. Instead, they typically believe in a symbolic or spiritual interpretation of the 1,000-year period mentioned in Revelation 20. They just saw this as hyperbole, as an exaggerated statement about how wonderful everything's going to be. They just took the number 1,000 and said it's a big number, and so they took it as, well, that's representing the bigness of what the church is going to be like as they made it be. Amillennialists often interpret the 1,000-year in Revelation 20 symbolically, representing the entire period between Christ's first and second comings. In this view, they saw the growth and spread of Christianity as evidence of Christ's spiritual reign in the hearts of believers and the gradual fulfillment of God's purposes in history. Again, a progressive mindset that things were going to just progress and get all better. Social advances could be seen as part of the broader spiritual transformation. They believe that the gospel's impact on individuals and cultures can lead to positive changes in ethics, justice, and human relationships. So they saw more of the social gospel of lifting people out of poverty. We want to lift people out of hell. They just wanted to lift people out of poverty. That mindset continues down to today. When you hear about social injustice and the whole DEI movement and just all of that, that's all directly related to that mindset. They want to have equity, everybody be equally poor. I mean, everybody be equal in outcome, and all society, nobody's prejudiced against, people aren't bigoted against anybody. That to them is the fulfillment of the kingdom. No, the fulfillment is to escape hell. That's the fulfillment of the gospel message. Paragraph 754, amillennials view history as a progression toward a final consummation when Christ returns and evil is ultimately defeated. They were not looking at death being defeated, they were looking at evil being defeated. Social advances such as improvements in education, healthcare, and technology can be seen as contributing to a more peaceful and just world, even if not achieving perfection until Christ's return. So again, what are they focused on? Look at it again, education, healthcare, and technology. That was their end goal, was to achieve those things, not salvation. Okay, so amillennialists often emphasize the importance of individual and societal transformation through the gospel, which can lead to greater social justice, compassion, and moral improvement. And then there's that last sentence. And then came World War I and upset everybody's apple carts. The liberals and the amillennialists, they thought that we would just keep advancing and this would spread over to Europe and Africa and Asia. But this was, the World War I was a complete repudiation of what they thought that they were bringing about, the whole social movement. It was the war to end all wars. Okay, they didn't know that World War II was going to come afterwards. World War II is often considered to be just an extension of World War I, that World War II was just unfinished business. Does that align with what you might know, Brother Tone, about World War II and World War I? Yeah, only one country involved. He says Germany. Yeah. Yeah, and he's saying, because we don't have the microphone on, the mistreatment of Germany brought about Second World War. At the end of World War I, they were not allowed to have armaments. They were supposed to be disarming. Hitler instead surreptitiously brought in greater armaments, and I can't remember what his excuse was, but it was he was lying to everybody about what he was doing. And I know that Churchill was warning the world, no, Germany is rearming. This is what's going on. And they looked at the armistice at the end of World War I, Hitler did, as the German people having been cheated. And it is possibly true that it was harsher than it could have been in their treatment after World War I. So this became an impetus for the German people to, out of the resentment for how they'd been overly judged or overly punished, then they were going to take things back again. So World War II was very much an extension of World War I. Yes, Miss Nancy.
I don't really know how there could be any mill people today, because I look back and can't see any time in history where anything just kept getting better and better to usher in Christ's second coming. I mean, how do they explain this?
Several ways. Okay, depends on who. In the Catholic Church, they just still maintain this impression that they are the kingdom of God, and they're just bringing things forward. Amongst Protestants who had come out of Catholicism, some of the things they carried with them, Protestantism, its success was essentially establishing sola scriptura and sola fide, and only the Bible and only by faith is salvation, and the other solas also. So they were good about dealing with justification by faith. The Protestants were, but they weren't dealing with the other things. Eschatology was not a bone of contention at the time. So they just brought forward the old Catholic notions that Revelation was to be treated as allegory. It was just sort of other baggage that they were carrying with them. So they just never developed any kind of dispensational thinking. They never developed an eschatology. And to this day, they're still impacted by that reasoning. It's just there in their textbooks, and so they keep teaching it. And they keep trying to defend it in some way, which is, it just boggles my mind to think that there are those that have this replacement theology where they think that, oh, the church replaces Israel. With their non-dispensational thinking, they're just carrying on the anti-Semitism that had existed. And how they can do that in the light of the current political situation, especially because as you were coming out of the Reformation time, you get all the way up to almost 1950, and they couldn't imagine that Israel would be reestablished as a nation. That's real recent history to us. 1950 is real contemporary history. So in 1948, when Israel became a nation again, this again upset the apple cart of theology. It bolstered the dispensationalists, and it left the amillennialists scratching their heads. So why do they do it? No real reason. It's just a holdover that they never contended with. Yeah, you'd think that since that time they would do some reevaluation. I think especially since October 7th of 2 years ago. It's like, hey, something big happened, and look at the Middle East. Do you need anything more to convince you that this is a thing? The Abraham Accords, which we know that all the peace is going to lead actually to sudden destruction. But it's interesting that you could even have that at all. The Middle East was so dead set against Israel.
You know that Israel is really God's chosen people. I sent you
I didn't see it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine a nation at war still able to bring out new things in technology, as well in medicine
Yeah.
and physics and all those things,
Yes. Yeah.
and which the world recognizes, by the way.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that should be pointed out is you look at how fast and easily Israel defeated all the all the terrorist organizations in
Yeah.
the world, the Hezbollah, the Hamas, the Houthis, and Iran.
Yeah.
And that's why, but just one quick comment, Pastor. Trump is very careful about Iran because he will repeat World War One, if World War Two, if he punishes Iran too much.
Yeah.
That's why he wants to deal with them,
Yeah.
so that they will be still, they will enjoy a viable relationship with other nations.
Yeah, and what's I thought was fascinating, I only just saw this last week. Iran has been going through a drought, and it's really impacting the country, and they're leaving the capital because of the lack of water supply. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it's not just all the political maneuverings. God's got a hand in that. It'll be interesting to watch how that unfolds. So yeah, you'd think they would figure out that there's something, but people just their priorities. Okay, so the war to end all wars. World War I, paragraph 756, was a watershed moment in the history of warfare for several significant reasons. It marked a departure from earlier forms of warfare in multiple ways, largely due to technological advancements, changes in tactics, and the scale of global involvement. Change in technology. Technology was really advancing. In fact, you can, just looking back over the last several millennia, you can see how technological advancements would alter the balance of power as certain militaries were accomplishing different technologies, like going from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, bronze to iron. Okay, bronze is a softer metal, iron is harder, and you could, with your iron weapons, defeat an army using Bronze Age technology. The idea of having the chariots gave a military technical advantage and advanced things with the military. Having stirrups on horses. Horseback riding was done without the benefit of stirrups. When they got stirrups, the horse became a war platform, because you could stand and lean down and maneuver and do things with warfare. So that became a new advancement. When you had the impact of gunpowder, okay, muskets were not very accurate weapons, and so when you had the military coming together, they would line up in rows, and you say, well, that's a dumb thing, everybody's shooting at you. They were all missing too. There's a lot of missing bullets, and so what you had to do was put up a wall of lead, and that was done by having them march up, some of them kneel down, and then take shots at each other. And they would have different ways that they would do that. You would, if you ever see them, they would sometimes stand in three ranks. The first rank would be kneeling down. The second rank would be behind them, and the third rank. While one rank had fired, the other ranks were waiting to fire. So one rank fired, the next rank would fire. While they were firing, the first rank was loading their muskets up. And then the third rank would fire, and it would be like a rotating thing. It was like a machine gun effect doing that. Well, then came the rifled barrels that were invented, where it's like a groove that goes down the inside of the barrel that puts a centrifugal spin on the bullet which improves its accuracy, and that was an advancement. So with every technological advancement, well, you come up to World War I, and now you're coming out of the Civil War, and you've in America, and now you've got machine guns that are being used, and chemical warfare that's being used. So I guess one of the latest, greatest technological advances was atomic warfare, which brought about a sort of détente with people. So you had. You had in fact, it was a very large change in World War I. Their military tactics had developed. I mean, you're bringing in airplanes, and it's just wonderful stuff to find out about. So this is a big war. Okay, it's not just all the nations that are involved and the political alignments. It's big technologically and with tactics. Okay, paragraph 757. World War I marked a shift towards total war, where entire societies were mobilized for war efforts. Now you attacked not only the military, but you would attack the means of production behind the military as well. And so you had cities that were being attacked. This included the conscription of large portions of the population, war propaganda, and the redirection of industrial production for wartime needs. The war effort not only involved not only soldiers, but now it was involving civilians, and this was done in unprecedented ways. Unlike previous conflicts, World War I involved a large number of nations from around the world. It was truly a global conflict, with battles taking place on multiple fronts, including the Western Front, Eastern Front, Middle East, and Africa. The involvement of colonial troops and resources from various empires added to the scale of war. The outcome of World War I led to significant political changes, including the collapse of empires such as the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. We're talking about a realignment of geopolitics. The redrawing of national boundaries and the emergence of new nation states, it also set the stage for future conflicts and the geopolitical landscape of the 20th century. So World War I is a big, big deal. As a result, the liberal churches, who thought that they were finally going to progress right on into social justice, they saw the world blowing up. George Marsden wrote this, and this is in page 254, The Effect. World War I was a tremendous challenge to this face in the progress of both culture and kingdom. European culture, for all its faults, had generally been viewed, together with its American offspring, as the best hope for the world, in a social sense, mind you. Now it seemed bent on destroying itself. When America was drawn into the war, liberal Protestants, like their conservative brethren, were divided. Fair number had at least some reservations about America's entry into the war, and some of these continue simply to see the issue as war versus universal peace. Many others, however, viewed the war as a struggle for democratic civilization, and hence, in the long run, peace against autocracy. Those who took this view were subject to the extreme and extravagant enthusiasm that swept the American people generally. For these modernists, a war to ensure the safety of democracy and to end war exactly fit the logic of their hopes for the kingdom. And we don't mean the kingdom of heaven, we mean that they would be developing the kingdom on earth of social justice. This went against it. Now, let me read here. Okay. Notes that I also prepared here. Marsden repeatedly points out that the horrors of World War I, number one, shattered the myth of inevitable human progress, exposed the naivete of liberal views of human nature. You know, oh yeah, people are all good and they just want to be good. No, they're wicked. It revealed that education and civilization did not produce peace. They thought that education was going to bring about this peace. No, it didn't. It didn't. It undermined the social gospel's confidence in a nearing golden age. They thought that the world was going to be entering into a golden age. No, it was not. In Fundamentalism and American Culture, Marsden writes that the war was a major disillusioning blow to the optimistic liberal worldview that had dominated the early 20th century. Liberal Protestantism had believed the world was on the verge of moral and social improvement. World War I showed the opposite. A technologically advanced, educated society could still commit barbarism. Now, because of this, Marsden argues that this disillusionment with optimism created an open door for fundamentalism, because fundamentalism had been decrying these things and saying, no, we need people to get saved. Fundamentalists already believed in human depravity. They didn't need World War I to show that. Fundamentalists already believed in the need for divine salvation rather than cultural progress. And by the way, this has been reflected in aspects of redeeming the culture in very modern, I'm talking within the last 20, 30 years, Christianity, where there's been a push to redeem the culture. They make an interesting case for redeeming the culture, saying, well, we not only need to redeem people, but we need to take back the movie industry. We need to take back the newspapers. We need to get control of those in order to keep propagating the gospel. Well, it's a nice idea to do that, but no, my objective is not to redeem culture. You can redeem all those things that you want to, and you can have people stuck in their sin. What we need is the gospel. Okay, so fundamentalists already believed in spiritual conflict, not evolutionary moral uplift. Remember, that's what the liberals were touting, was an evolution of morality. No, you need a redemption of the spirit, a redemption of the soul, and not just people becoming better behaved. Marsden emphasizes that dispensational premillennialism surged because it offered a coherent eschatological explanation. Everything was in order. The World War I was just a matter of looking at how things worked out according to God's eschatological plans. And remember, eschatology was only being developed in the previous maybe 100 years before World War I. But it became the answer for things, and it was more suited. Dispensational premillennialism predicted exactly the kind of decline and turmoil that World War I represented. People were disillusioned with idealistic kingdom building, turned towards a theology of imminent judgment and Christ's return. That's one of the things that the liberals, found us at fault. We were trying to get people saved out of the world, and they were saying, no, we need to make the world a better place. We see the world as something to escape, not something to become entrenched in. So Marsden said that World War I crippled liberal Protestant optimism, a false optimism. World War I exposed the weaknesses of liberal postmillennial assumptions, okay, or I'll say presumptions. World War I shifted energy and credibility toward fundamentalism, and dispensationalism was uniquely positioned to correctly interpret the chaos. Okay, so this is setting the stage now. World War I was setting the stage for what would become the fundamentalist controversy. This is at the bottom of page 254. We're not going to go into that today. We're going to explain that more. The stage is really set after 1917. You're talking 5 years later. uh, somebody like Harry Emerson Fosdick who appears on the scene. How many people have heard the name Harry Emerson Fosdick? Heard it? How many people remember it from Lil Abner, the comic strip? Yeah, yeah. I remember reading that when I was a kid, and he was only appearing up to the 1940s, according to the one piece of research that I did. But I remember in the 60s, Harry Emerson Fosdick. I did not know what it was all about, but he was a major character in the Lil Abner comic strip.
Pastor,
Yeah, go ahead.
didn't in the comic strip wasn't he referred to as Fearless Fosdick?
Yes, he was referred to as Fearless Fosdick. Okay, and we're going to see why Al Cap lampooned him so much. But like I say, that was. Whoops, am I? What's going on? Maybe testing 1, 2, 3.
I hear you.
You can hear me. I can't
Yes.
hear me coming out of the speaker.
I still hear you.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to give a bang to the pulpit again. Testing. Oh, there you go. We can hear it through the speaker here now. We have to do that. We have to do a Fonzie every once in a while and give a tap to the pulpit. Yes, for emphasis, but also to reestablish the connection. Okay. Yeah. I can't remember what I was saying. Basically, that Fosdick became a very big lightning rod that was like touching off an explosion where fundamentalism really exploded on the scene and became a historical an historical phenomena. And so we're going to go into that. Okay. Enough said, because although we could take 20 more minutes, I think changing the subject, getting something else would be a little bit too much. Let's just recognize not just how World War I was so big in the world. It had a major impact on the religious scene as well. Other questions or comments? Miss Donna? I don't know what that one was. Yeah,
So
I think
is
it's
it
on.
that World War I contributed to the secularization of society, would you say, or the secular mindset?
No, it would be an interruption for the secular mindset. It's not going to stop the secular mindset, okay? But if the secular mindset was leading up to a greater understanding of secularity, this would be the secular mindset's failure. World War I was the secular mindset's failure, which would set them back. Doesn't stop them, though. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Brother Tone.
It did strengthen the position of secularism in the case of Russia as a Soviet Union. It strengthened it because it became widespread. It affected even the Asian Peninsula, China, with the rise of Mao Zedong.
Okay, yes, on a worldwide scene, it would do that because, well, they would. But I would say that was more the idea of taking political advantage for the power structures to change in Russia, which reflected communism and communists' atheistic approach. But I would say, though, in America, no, it didn't strengthen their, yeah. But yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and he's saying that it gave the impetus for both Russia and China. So yes, in that sense, it's kind of like we diverged. Okay, America fundamentalism was strengthened. In Russia, it was weakened because of people taking advantage of the vacuum. The, yes, and against the fruits of amillennialism also. It stop amillennialism. It did decrease. Amillennialism did decrease. Fundamentalism was on the ascendancy, and we can see, and we're going to see that really the impact of fundamentalism in the evangelical churches today. It's still felt because evangelical churches, the mega churches, and all those, as long as they're not given over to the Reformed movement, they all recognize the significance of the revelation and the rapture and all that. Yeah, Brother Tone.
It had the opposite effect on American society, Pastor, because we were sending more missionaries during that period.
Yes. Yeah, and all because of the growth of fundamentalism.
Correct.
And the rise of the modern missions movement. Yes. So God really has blessed America, and so when people, when they look at the American exceptionalism, does not mean that we are superior. It means that we have been involved in an exceptional way to spread the gospel, and it's like God has positioned America as a blessing to the world. Now, and supporting Israel too. Yes, supporting Israel would also bless that. So it's not that we're so much superior because we are better than you are, but we have historical circumstances that uniquely place America in the position to be a blessing to the world.
Pastor?
Yes, sir.
What we're speaking about, especially Israel, and what you were talking about before, just made me think of something. It's kind of a fun fact, but it just goes to show how the connection between the United States and Israel and how important it was and still is. Years ago, the Israeli government sent an urgent message to us. It was after their air battle with Syria back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And they asked for our military leaders to come over with the engineers from, I believe the originator of the F-15 was McDonnell Douglas. And at first we didn't know what they were talking about. What's going on? They brought them over and they showed them a plane on its landing gear, an F-15 that was in battle, sitting there with a wing missing, a full wing missing. And they said, you need to know this. We discovered something about your plane that you sold us. One of our pilots had his wing knocked completely off, and using the remaining wing surfaces and the controls was able to nurse it back in and land it. And we want to show you and have him tell you these techniques. And it's been in F-15 pilot training ever since.
Oh, wow.
And that is a benefit of how they've been a blessing to us.
Yeah.
So a pilot, F-15 pilot, if he loses a wing now, doesn't have to panic.
Yeah, I'd panic.
Well, I would too.
Yeah.
I just thought that was amazing. And they've done that with other things. They've taken some of our stuff and said, you got to see this. I don't know if you're aware of this, and then just show us amazing things that they discover.
Yeah. And we could go into a lot of the hype in the anti-Semitic movement of this last year and how it's grown into this monstrosity that it is. I will hear these panels where you have these pro-Palestinian activists and the lies that they're telling, and some of the other people in the panel saying, no, you're wrong. This is, and they can demonstrate that they're wrong. How people can be caught up in this anti-Semitism is, I think, totally shocking. I am shocked that it could get to be this way. Mamdani is, I think somebody wants to invite Netanyahu over for a visit after Mamdani takes office, because Mamdani is like, okay, well, we're going to arrest Netanyahu. You can't do that. Okay, excuse me. This demonstrates your ignorance of international law and diplomacy. You can't do that, Mamdani. It's not allowed to do. Which, goes along with all the other nonsense. Brother Tone.
Yes, here's what Paul says in Romans 11 about Israel being rejecting Jesus, but then in the end times it will come back. As concerning the gospel, they, meaning the Israelis, are enemies for your sakes. Your, meaning us Gentiles. But as touching the election, they are beloved for the Father's sakes. For the gifts and calling of God are without repentance. That's why the covenant with Israel is continuing.
Yes.
For as ye in times past have not believed God, yet have now obtained mercy through their unbelief. So, the context are provided with the verses before. The chapter 11 is a good chapter of Romans concerning the policy of having a American support for Israel.
Indeed. Ms. Donna? I don't know that conservatives are. No. You have some people like Nick Fuentes, who's supposedly touted as some kind of conservative. No, he's a dirtbag. And so you will have, dirtbags that are out there. I think that's a good title. I'm sorry. Tucker Carlson is a libertarian. Yeah. This, in fact, I'm going to say it's not so much that it's conservatives. It would be the reformed thinking that's carrying this forward. And I'm shocked that they would. Miss Nancy.
Yeah, I just heard this morning there were two conservative commenters saying that very subtly the anti-Semites and the raging left are trying to make Nick Fuentes look. They even doctor up pictures to make him look handsome, and giving him artificial props so that they can say, there's your conservative.
Yeah, false flags.
False. And when you stop and think about it, anti-Semitism is satanic. It is diabolical, because
satanic.
Anything that God loves, Satan is going to hate. Satan is going to target. This is why he's always been after the Jews, to wipe out the entire population. Several times we see, even in the Bible, efforts to just wipe out all the Jews. And you would think Satan, being as smart as he is, would know God is not going to let that happen, and yet he keeps trying.
Yeah.
And anybody that goes along with his agenda, they might be unwittingly doing it, but they are being satanic in their completely deranged and unhinged hatred of Israel. There's absolutely no reason for it.
Amen.
There used to be a salesman that would come to our office
yes,
who,
I remember
who claimed to be a Christian. And it's not like he was extremely dedicated or anything like that, but anything that I was like, we would talk about the Bible and religion, and then he would go on a rant about his hatred for Jews. And I said, there is no way you can be a Bible-believing Christian and say and have those kind of sentiments toward God's people. I said, do you realize without the Jewish people, we would have no Messiah, we would have no scriptures? But I said, where are you coming from? How can you say this? And he was just parroting stuff about all the troubles in the world coming from the Jews. I said, many of the problems we have in this world stems from the hatred of Jews. Amen. And the perversion of religion. I said, it's not that it's their fault. I said that, in fact, they've been very noble, helping Arabs and Palestinians. And I mean, you have brilliant Jewish doctors that will help their enemies in hospitals. You don't find Arabs doing that so much for Jews. You know, they feel that that's like a big betrayal if you do anything that favors Jews. And a lot of this, again, is just so deranged because it stems from Satan.
Yeah. Okay, so you can see that World War I is this critical point where dispensationalism really comes to the forefront. And so all of this affects us today. We're not so far removed from 1920. Just by 100 years. What's a mere 100 years? No, but we are, this is part and parcel of our current movement.